Man, this was supposed to be a celebratory show after the Sox finally won a series for the first time since June. Instead, two announcements soured that. Let's discuss how next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written content at southsideshowdown.com. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And the White Sox took 2 of 3 from the Oakland A's to win their first series since the end of June. I want to discuss the good coming out of that in the final segment, as I'm scrapping the Minor League Monday report because finally winning 2 straight is something we should talk about, but 2 bad announcements are going to rain on that. In the first segment, I want to tackle General Manager Chris Getz' announcement during Friday night's broadcast that the team will not spend much in the offseason. I'll discuss why you should be upset, but not because it's the owner being cheap. And then it is Yoan Moncada is going to be coming off the IL to play the final 12 games. I want to discuss in the second segment why that's just a waste of time. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right. To the shock of the only out-of-town stupid in the world, General Manager Chris Getz said the team will not be spending much in free agency. And again, the reason why I say out-of-town stupid is you and I should know by now that the owner's not going to spend a ton of money. We've lived through this now through the offseason going into the 2022 season, the 2023 season, and last season. So we know that not a lot of money is going to be spent. And while I'm not thrilled with the news, considering the Sox will enter the offseason with just 2 guaranteed deals at a total cost of $32.1 million, that's owed to Andrew Benintendi and Luis Robert Jr. Andrew Benintendi accounts for $17 million. Luis Robert Jr. accounts for $15.1. Obviously, there's money to play with. You and I, again, we're used to the owner not authorizing spending. And I want to propose a couple of reasons that you and I should not be thrilled beyond the fact that Jerry Reinsdorf is just going to be cheap. First, Getz's logic is history repeating itself from the offseason before the 2023 season because he's going to bank on some veterans bouncing back from subpar years. Second, his announcement lacked any hope when he should have been selling it like 1998 and the kids can play days. Third, there's going to be a missed opportunity to add a couple of free agents that could help at least get this team back to 70 wins and help down the road, despite the risk of, those players declining in their 30s. And then fourth, it means you and I are going to have to rely on Getz and his front office's acumen to add talent off the scrap heap, where the first offseason overall is a failure. His first offseason of finding guys off the scrap heap, complete failure outside of finding Eric Fetty and Paul DeYoung rediscovering his power stroke. So here's the quote that got Sox social media up in arms and basically baseball social media up in arms. This is what Chris Getz said during Friday night's broadcast when he was on during the third inning. Quote, here it is. Quote, we're not going to be working heavy in free agency. We've got guys on the field right now who need to improve their game, end quote. Now, Steve Stone asked, to set this up, he asked Getz what the priorities would be in the offseason, and Getz confirmed that he's comfortable with the pitching, and then he brought up the hitting issues, and that is when he made that statement. Okay, now if he had flipped the comment around to say, we're not going to work heavy in free agency pitching-wise, fine. You don't need to be going out into free agency and signing a ton of pitchers. Maybe a reliever or two just to find some value and, again, trade at the trade deadline, because we saw at this year's trade deadline, relievers were the ones that were yielding the best returns. But hitting-wise, you need to put some work in, because Getz is going to be following the same logic that Rick Hahn did after that disappointing 2022 season. If you remember, Rick Hahn was like, well, we need some guys to bounce back from subpar years. And, also, we need to sign Andrew Benintendi. and then just get a new manager, and that'll fix everything. We'll go from 81 and 81 with, guys bouncing back, Andrew Benintendi and Pedro Grifol. We're going to win the AL Central. And then the team completely decayed and rotted to the corpse that it is right now. So Getz is about to make that same mistake. If he thinks all this team needs is a new manager, Andrew Benintendi putting together a full season of good hitting, along with Luis Robert Jr. returning to a superstar form, and Andrew Vaughn finally, realizing his potential. Because while it's nice to see Andrew Benintendi hit a walk-off home run on Saturday, and he is hitting the ball much better post All-Star break, he's not going to be exactly a guy that you can rely on to, add more wins if he has a bounce back season. Even in his best seasons, he's usually been a 1 to 2 F4 player, because I doubt he's going to repeat his 2018 career season when he produced 4.4 wins above replacement. Normally he's just a guy that happens to have the richest free agent contract in franchise history because the team won't pay the going rate for premium talent. Andrew Vaughn, it's time to accept he's a replacement level player. That's what he is. You could get more power by signing Rice Hoskins or Josh Bell in the offseason. Now, you keep Vaughn just because he comes cheaper and younger, but seriously, Josh Bell could provide more power, but the same amount of power, and you would not miss a thing. Luis Robert Jr., he looks like he would rather be any place else but on the South Side. And he's paid, so it's not like he needs to, go out and earn his bucks. And you always have the injury risk with him. So you're banking on 3 players to have bounce back seasons as your foundation to get you back to, say, 60 wins. I'm skeptical that even gets you back to 50. And then, sell me some hope at least, man. Give me the sales job. Go Ron Schuler. So for those in Gen Z, and I'll get to that in a second, but that was a GM who in 1997 into 1998 was just selling hope left and right. Because the reason why you have to sell hope is, we've seen 3 off seasons now where the owner hasn't opened up his wallet enough. And now what USA Today's Bob Nightingale reports, the Chicago White Sox, who should break the baseball's all-time record of 120 losses this week, plans to cut payroll in 2025 after sustaining substantial losses in revenue during this horrific season. Because again, it's our fault, for not coming out to watch a bad club. I can just see Jerry saying, well, I'm not going to authorize $150 million again. These guys will come out and watch us. They should be like Cubs fans and blindly follow us. Now, to be fair, and I know it's hard to be fair to a billionaire, with unknown revenue streams of the Chicago Sports Network, Jerry's cheapness, and obviously the substantial losses, those 3 factors are going to add up to a lack of spending, obviously. But you can always sell hope. Now, I went back and watched that 3rd inning again just to catch all the questions again. And I know Steve Stone brought up the Kansas City Royals. Hey, they lost 100 games. They made a couple of quick, prudent signings. And look at them now. They're going to be in the playoffs potentially. Well, you got to stop throwing that out because the Kansas City Royals had Bobby Witt Jr. to build around. The White Sox do not have that stud right now. They're lacking it. And he didn't do a great job of selling hope. He kind of went over, here's the good things. He even went over again Miguel Vargas, and it's like, stop selling me Miguel Vargas. He's a bad Major League Baseball player. Instead, go out with the same vigor and fervor that former GM Ron Schuler had in 1998. And for the Gen Z crowd out there, that was the GM who was ordered in 1997 to trade away veteran talent at the trade deadline, even though the club was 3.5 games back of the Cleveland. I'm not going to say their team name at the time just because, hey, I don't want to get canceled here. But because the owner thought it was crazy to think the team would catch them, and he didn't want to pay Wilson Alvarez and Roberto Hernandez. But we got the kids could play. And guess what? The kids could play. Megli Ordonez, Mark Burley, they came out of that. So sell me that. Give me the vision of how Brian Ramos, Edgar Caro, Dominic Fletcher, Brooks Baldwin, and Colson Montgomery are going to make things better. Tell me about how they need the runway to eventually help this team get to be competitive. Show me that hope that you think that these guys have the potential if they just are given 600 at-bats. And I know a lot of you are like, oh, why are you bringing in Dominic Fletcher, Brooks Baldwin? They can't hit. Dominic Fletcher and Brooks Baldwin have not been given the runway yet. We don't know. And there's nothing wrong with saying, look, we bottomed out. We've got some guys left over from the previous regime that we want to give a shot at. We're confident in these guys. And while that's happening, we're going to continue to draft well, scout well. We're going to do everything better. We're going to get this owner to invest in all these front office changes that we need to operate like a modern front office, because at least that's the one thing I got to give Getz his flowers. He's at least understood what needs to be fixed. Now we have to trust, can he fix it? Can he hire the right people? I don't know about that. And sitting out on free agency is a missed opportunity for the owner to extend an olive branch and sign someone at the going rate of premium talent of over 100 million. And especially Anthony Santander and Willy Adames are on the market. Now, I know they come with that potential decline as they're going to be in their 30s, but they also provide power and, more importantly, intangibles that this franchise needs. Adames, he's a leader and beloved in the clubhouse. Santander, I shared it a couple weeks ago, has a great approach at the plate. Those would be two big opportunities to obviously solve your right field issue and give yourself plenty of cover, because some people don't think Colson Montgomery can play shortstop. But it's not going to happen because, they're not going to do the heavy lifting, obviously. And finally, it means Getz's acumen of finding players off the scrap heap is what you and I will have to bank on to turn things around to even get to 65 wins. And that's just sad, too, that we have to be like, hey, let's hope we can get to 65 wins next year. But you have to hope he can find the franchise's version of Brent Rooker. And honestly, I'm not very confident. I mean, yes, he did sign Eric Fetty. But Eric Fetty was a professional baseball player who had to be exiled to the Korean Baseball League. And also the New York Mets were in on him. But he signed a bullpen in which most of those signings were DFA'd. And yes, Paul DeJong found his home run stroke, but he was brought in for his defense, and he just stopped feeling the ball very well. Martin Maldonado was a disaster. I'm just not confident Getz and his staff can go to the junk shop and find something that can be salvaged. And then my biggest fear is he thinks he will, he thinks he's going to find these veteran guys off the scrap heap and that they need to play more to give him the runway for the younger players, because that's what they've been doing all season. And speaking of a veteran player that will take time away from a younger player, Yoan Moncada is coming back for the final 12 games. I'll discuss why that makes absolutely no sense next on Locked On White Sox. Hey, you've heard me talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, FanDuel has something a little different for you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And FanDuel is excellent for futures, props, and parlays. Got enough evidence on who to lock in as your pick for the World Series winner? FanDuel has some good lines where you can even triple a $10 bet on the plus 320 Los Angeles Dodgers. You can even take $10 on the New York Yankees at plus 500, and that would yield you $50. They got some great lines on their futures. I've always said, FanDuel is great for props and futures with the lines that they're giving out, and then you can turn them into some really fun parlays. So definitely you want to play FanDuel as it's available in Illinois. So just visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sports book. And thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the White Sox start a 3-game road series against the Los Angeles Angels tonight. The first pitch is at 8:38 Central Standard Time. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with the SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit that like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcast. As Locked On is available at places such as Apple and Spotify. I'd love to be an excellent audio companion when you're mowing the lawn or maybe sitting in traffic, especially for those in Chicago. You're going to be sitting on the Kennedy. Hey, I'm here for you. Like I've always said, I'm here to challenge you on your White Sox takes. I'm here to entertain you on your White Sox takes. I may be here to reinforce you. And especially for those that have checked out, but occasionally want to check back in, I'm here for you. So no one wastes time quite like your Chicago White Sox. The move the team is about to make is the ultimate time waster. And it is a sad move, too, as it reeks of desperately trying to avoid the inevitable of breaking the 1962 New York Mets 120 losses record. It's inevitable. The Sox have 115 losses, and yet this move that they're about to make is just like one last Hail Mary gasp to see, can this player help us avoid losing 5 or even then 6 more games to set the record? And it contradicts the franchise's plan for next season to serve up some youth. Then again, this is what the team has done all season. And reports are out that Yoan Moncada will join the team in Los Angeles and come off the IL to play the final 12 games. That's right. Yoan Moncada is back, baby, for no reason whatsoever. I don't understand it, except for they really think that he is going to be the savior, that he's going to help the Sox win 8 more games that they need to win just to avoid breaking the 1962 New York Mets record. Because on its face, it makes no sense to bring back a third baseman who's been out since April 9th with a left adductor strain. His constant injuries is one of the reasons on the U.S. Constitution size list. And I think I might be underestimating how big that list would be. I think it's a massive scroll type list of the team's decay into a rotting corpse that it is right now. That's going to be the worst team of all time. Because they're on that collision course. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But the biggest thing that I just don't like about it is he's going to take away bats from Ramos, who should be playing third or DHing for the final 12 games of the year. And I don't care about the matchups and that. He needs the at-bats. And you could say, well, it's just 12 games. Yes, it's 12 major league games. You should be using this as a risk-free extended spring training. And he's going to take away at-bats from Vargas, who, again, is probably a bad Major League Baseball player. But you're stuck with him, so give him his runway that you keep claiming that he needs. And he's going to take away at-bats from even Jacob Amaya. And you could be like, why are you defending Jacob Amaya? Well, he's one of the few guys that I've seen this season that's actually trying to take advantage of his playing time. And he could be a long shot, successful reclamation project. We don't know yet. And all because the only thing I can think of is the front office believes Moncada's bat, which was shown to have to be a potential good season before getting hurt, can help the Sox lose those 120 plus games. But if my math is correct, the Sox have to go 8-4 to avoid the fate of breaking the 1962 Mets or tying them. That means you got to win series against the Angels twice, the San Diego Padres in San Diego, and at Detroit. Excuse me one second. The Padres are doing everything they can to stay atop the NL wildcard race. So you best believe that if they think they're a championship team, they're not going to mess around with the Sox. They're not going to play with their food. And 9 of the final 12 games for the Sox are on the road, where they have been terrible this year. And also the Sox have beaten the Tigers one time so far this season. 120 or more losses is a matter of when, not if. Accept it, Chris Getz. Accept it, front office. Accept it, Jerry Reinsdorf. Don't waste our time with a farewell tour of Yoan Moncada. All he is owed is the money on his team high $24.8 million and then his $5 million buyout. That's all he's owed. Ramos needs those at bats, especially he has a .571 slugging percentage since coming back to the big leagues. .571 over his past 7 games. Hardly anybody is slugging the ball. He's one of the few. He's finally driving the ball, 2 home runs in those 7 games, and he's actually playing with some passion. The Sox could use some passion. And half the time they just look like they're lifeless out there. And also, Brian Ramos could actually field the position well. And then when you got Grady Sizemore, someone in the front office that just loves to keep playing Lenine Sosa, Nicky Lopez, and Gavin Sheets, it means with Moncada back, it's going to be hard to find Ramos at bats. It's going to be hard to find Vargas at bats. It's going to be hard to find Amaya at bats. And yes, Amaya is probably going to be next year's utility infielder if he's brought back. But he should be rewarded for trying, actually. If you're applauding the trying effort here, like I talked about last week, this is a guy that should be rewarded. He's actually trying to take advantage of the playing time he's been given. And I think Vargas is going to be a bad major league ball player. And mostly it's because he's not accepting that he's no longer on the Dodgers. But you should still take these last 12 games, especially since they're risk-free 12 games, because who cares if you win or lose? That national media will eventually go away. And again, if you lose these next 12 games, at least you're doing it for the right purposes because you're getting evaluations. And you should be using this to see, hey, maybe can he put something together to finish the season positively on? But instead, you and I are going to get Yoan Moncada's farewell tour that no one asked for at all because the front office cannot accept the fate of this season. And that season is you're probably 99.9% likely to finish with 120 losses or more. But hey, there was something positive that happened over the weekend, and it was the Sox won a series. So let's discuss the rare goodness of 2 straight wins next on Locked On White Sox. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers, and all you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September, and now that's going to be 2 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends, and PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. And I've told you about my buddy who lives behind the Cheddar Curtain, and he uses PrizePicks to get his picks in, and he loves it because of how easy it is to play. And I think it's just a fun concept. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. And you don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And the White Sox start a 3-game series against the Los Angeles Angels tonight. The first pitch is at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. To catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app, search White Sox. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Shout out to all my everydayers. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Mine was all right. Saturday, was kind of got some family pictures taken, which was kind of fun. Otherwise, yesterday took my daughter to the zoo because the Bears obviously played at 7, and I did catch at least most of the game. I'm gonna go back on the DVR and watch obviously the second half as I just crashed out. Obviously, it's one of those things where if you're a Bears fan, yes, you can definitely be mad at General Manager Ryan Poles for. I think he's taken some swings at the offensive line, but it's not been enough. Like he keeps getting it wrong. And I think you got every right to be upset that a former offensive lineman keeps getting the offensive line wrong. But otherwise, it would have been nice to see them steal a victory from Houston. All right. Give it up for the White Sox for bouncing back from a 2-0 defeat on Friday night, and that terrible news gets shared that evening. They came back to win the next 2 games, and they have won a series for the first time since June. I mean, come on, man. As I said on last Monday, sometimes we just got to enjoy these wins, these rare moments of just thinking, well, I don't have to worry about breaking the 1962 New York Mets record, even though I discussed it's just a matter of when in the last segment. But I mean, Saturday night, the team nearly did what the White Sox have done all year, and that is blow a lead and lose. But they found a way to win. And that's a big, that's huge. Like, they actually found a way to have a walk-off home run moment. They haven't had that since the haters home run, the haters call by from John Scherfen back in May, when ironically it was Andrew Benintendi who did the walk-off home run then. But Saturday night had the makings of the White Sox losing, as Justin Anderson gave up a 3-run lead in the ninth in part of bad luck. And, that ninth inning was just total makeshift, total what we've seen with the White Sox in terms of the bullpen blows the lead and some bad luck was involved, as there was a high chopper over 2 diving Sox infielders. Or leaping. I think it was Amaya and Lenine Sosa. They were there. The ball is just too high on that chopper and it just lands to tie the game. And then you had that grounder before that it was hit so hard that it ran right into Sosa and it ate him up. So, you think about it. Bad pitching from the bullpen that loads the bases, and then the defense making a bad play, and then just bad luck. That would have wrecked that chances of the Sox leaving Saturday with a victory that they should have had. And they somehow found a way to come out with a victory, because something amazing happened. On that high chopper, Nick DeLoach fields it from left, and he's a much better fielder than Andrew Benintendi, and he threw a strike to home that Chucky Robinson caught. He had to leap, obviously, but caught, grabs, tags the runner out. That would have been the go-ahead run. Thank you, Chucky Robinson, for your service. And then, thankfully, Benintendi, who was DHing that night, crushes a walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth to preserve a 7-6 win. And the White Sox avoid pulling a White Sox. They avoided it. They didn't White Sox it. And then yesterday, 4-2 lead in the ninth for the Sox. Oakland gets a home run to cut it to 4-3 with 2 outs. And here you're thinking, oh no, it's going to happen again. But Frazier Ellard gets the final out for his first big league career save. And the Sox are now on a cusp of another rare win streak, because they're playing the Angels. So they have a shot. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, they're going to win. But the Angels are not a very good team. The Sox are downright awful. But when they play not very good teams, they at least have a shot. And you got to thank Gavin Sheets for this series win, because he crushed home runs in game 2 and 3. Lenine Sosa, he deserves some flowers. Went 5 for 8 in those 2 victories. Brian Ramos went 2 for 3 with a walk and a homer yesterday, which is what you want to see out of the younger player, because we might not be seeing him much for the rest of the season. Even Luis Robert Jr. had a good series at the plate, including 3 hits on Saturday. And the most impressive player was Sean Burke, who made his first big league career start. Went 5 innings where he gave up just a 2-run homer along with 4 more hits after that homer. Walked 2 and struck out 5. And hey, Chris Flexen, I got to give him some praise. He pitched 5 shutout innings on Saturday night. And even Garrett Crochet looked much more crisp on Friday night. But the White Sox won back-to-back games for the first time since late June. That just shows you how bad July and August was. That the Sox could not win back-to-back games. That they could only play decent baseball for 24 hours, and that they could only play decent baseball like 6 or 7 times between July and August. But hey, won back-to-back and finally won a series. I believe that was like 21 or 22 straight series defeats that they snapped by beating Oakland. So celebrate good times there. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And finally, I'll be back tomorrow to discuss why Rob Manfred is not going to save us from Jerry Reinsdorf. Feel free to leave comments about today's topics regarding Chris Getz announcing that the team will not be spending much in the offseason, Yoan Moncada returning, and the Chicago White Sox actually winning back-to-back games. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow.